These whales are the work of a landlocked Colorado artist. Larry Braun, whose family is from Longmont, is a member of the Audubon Artists and the Society of Animal Artists in America. And yet the animals that he casts in his sculpture are not the ones from the mountains, but those from the sea. How did you become interested in marine animals, Larry?
Well, Pat, I've always been interested in animals, but when I was in Miami, Florida, I worked for a time as a marine taxidermist.
What did you do in that?
What marine taxidermy mostly involves is making molds of the fish that are caught and then casting those in fiberglass or paper mache and retouching the castings to look like the real fish as it appeared out of the water.
So in other words, it's very similar to sculpture rather than stuffing something that's not.
Exactly. It's very much involved in sculpture techniques.
Well, in these whales that you've brought in, I noticed that the detail shows an eye for that kind of detail in marine life. What are these things here?
Pat, these are bowhead whales, and they're called baleen whales. Now, these are the baleen plates that filter microorganisms which the whale eats out of the water. In order to feed itself, it sucks great quantities of water into its mouth and then filters the microorganisms out through the baleen plates.
So you learned a lot about the details of different kinds of marine life. I noticed that one of the marine inhabitants that you did sculpture of was also a mermaid.
Well, yes, that's true, Pat. Down in Miami, I became first familiar with, of course, skin diving and the manatees, which are inhabitants of the Florida waters. In the piece entitled Mermaids, I have tried to show the melding of the skin diver in contact with the manatee, which is believed to be the mythological source of mermaid myths.
Okay. Well, now, how did you accomplish that kind of airy look in such a heavy metal as bronze to be working with?
Well, initially, I sculpt the original in a soft material such as wax or clay, and then in the studio, I make a rubber mold, which I have here, and out of this rubber mold, wax patterns are drawn in multiples so that we can make more than one of any one sculpture. These wax patterns are retouched and taken to a foundry where each wax pattern is invested in a separate ceramic shell, which, when the ceramic is fired, the wax melts out, and hence the name lost wax process. In the cavity, which is created by the absence of the wax, the bronze is then poured, and when that is cooled, the ceramic is smashed to pieces. It can't be used again, and the raw bronze is taken out and then retouched. Flaws are welded up and finished with chemical acids in order to achieve the colors that you so often see in bronzes.
Okay. Now, the seams on the raw bronze part are the weld of two parts of it being put together, or what?
Yes, they frequently have to cut the wax into pieces to make it small enough to be cast, and those are chased off with files and grinding tools.
Well, how did you choose to work with bronze in the first place? It seems to be a very difficult process.
Well, it is a long, involved process, but it also lasts more than a lifetime, and I think that's the fascination with bronze, is it's something that'll be here a long time after I'm gone.
Well, maybe you will also be preserving the manatee in your bronze, even if we can't preserve them in the waters of Florida.
Well, I think that's instrumental in my choice of the marine mammals.
Well, thank you very much, Larry, for joining us. For Longmont Cable News, this is Pat Brewington. This is a detail of this abstract painting by the Longmont artist Scott English, who works with a variety of media, but who chooses to do abstract art rather than representational. We asked Scott to come into our studios today in order to find out why he chooses the abstract. Scott, what is the appeal of abstract instead of photographic art for you?
Well, you get the unexpected immediately. If you have representational work, say a tree, we've all seen trees. So the abstract is able to show you something you have never seen before. And hopefully that, in the very beginning, will elicit enough emotional response that I can get your attention, grab your attention. Also, abstraction will allow me to deal with very large issues, concepts that can't be dealt with in a representational form.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I would imagine that you would hear frequently, but it doesn't look like something I could see. You know, it's not art.
Right. As an artist, you really want to show someone something they've never seen before. That's where the artist, I think, serves any function at all. And for myself, it's to reveal the inner experience. And the inner experience is something that we all have, but we don't get a chance to talk to each other about it very often. That's where art can focus us on things we've all experienced, but we've never had an opportunity to talk about.
And how to paint something that is not concrete.
Exactly.
You know, those feelings. For example, in this painting behind you that you've brought in today, what is the feeling that you're trying to evoke there, the abstraction?
That painting is about the creation of the solar system. The large yellow and pink object is the sun as it's beginning to create the solar system. My philosophy is that the sun created the solar system. The gray areas are symbolic, and as symbolic, they are an abstraction of the planets, of matter, of Earth. And so...
Would you expect a viewer of that painting to feel that, to recognize that that's where it came from? Or what would you expect a viewer to feel?
Well, that's why I've got the bright yellow. The bright yellow is going to associate with everybody's sun, and the circle, sun. The pink area, what I'm trying to get at there, is pink to me has a feeling of life, of being alive. So that I'm trying with the yellow and pink to create the abstraction of creation itself.
Well, now, in this painting and in some examples of others you've brought in, there's a lot of texture involved. How do you use texture in this abstract sense?
Texture, for me, creates the unexpected. If you look at most paintings, say, of Renaissance paintings, there is the illusion of texture, but no real texture. I want to show real texture to grab your eye and give you something that you're not expecting to see.
So you not only work then in paintings with texture, but also in the sculpted forms that we're looking at here. Texture and abstraction are combined in this piece.
Right.
What is this?
Well, this is my desire to be able to hold on to the universe, a piece of the universe. So the center object here is the nebula in Orion. And I wanted it, though, to be contained by a box-like form that, for me, would be a symbolic or abstraction of human need to contain concepts.
Okay. What about this piece here that's a new one you've just worked on?
That one, it grew by itself out of recycled materials, and when I was done, I think I realized that it was the warrior, and that probably came out from all this turmoil we're seeing around the world. As an artist, I'm sensitive to everything that I see and experience, and if it's a big enough concept, eventually it comes out as art.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Scott, and for explaining what some of the purposes are. I enjoy your work, but sometimes I don't know how it came up in you.
Well, thank you. It was fun to be able to describe it to you.
Bob? us in the studios today is Mr. Dan Grove, who is the concertmaster for the Longmont Symphony Orchestra. But I don't know what a concertmaster is. Would you tell us, Dan?
Sure. A concertmaster is the person who's the head of the violin section. And in general, he is, you could call him the second most important member of the orchestra next to the conductor. He is very much involved in the performance of a concert, during the performance of a concert, with what the actual motions of the orchestra are. For example, the way he holds his violin, the way he brings in the section, all have to do with keeping the group together.
Also, you're the one who helps people tune up, aren't you?
Yeah, that's the first thing that the audience will see during a concert is the concertmaster comes out on the stage with his violin and looks to the oboe player and says, "May we have an A?" And then we get tuned up with the A. And so that is one of the functions of the concertmaster as well. Another thing that I do with the Longmont Symphony is that I take the first violins alone by themselves, and we have a rehearsal, and we call it a sectional rehearsal.
Oh.
And then also I will do the same thing with the second violins at another time. And so we get a certain amount of togetherness so that we will play better together as a group.
So you practice or conduct that portion of the orchestra on your own periodically as well?
Yeah. What it amounts to is every other week. One week I take one group, and then the next week I take the other section.
Now, I think a lot of people think of symphony orchestras, since everyone is dressed in black and seems to be quite somber, as sort of a somber affair. And you were telling me some anecdotes from orchestral performances or rehearsals that made it clear that people are having a lot of fun when they perform in the orchestra.
Well, an orchestra is actually anything but a somber group of people. I mean, they are people, and they sit around, they enjoy each other's company and making music together. And for example, here in the Longmont Symphony, there wouldn't be anyone there who didn't want to be there and who did not enjoy being there.
It's
and so,
completely volunteer.
Yeah, it's a volunteer organization.
Well, what about those horn jokes and oboe jokes you were telling me about that pass amongst the members of the symphony during performances?
Well, it's not necessarily during the performances,
Well,
it's more during the rehearsals.
Yes.
But
One would
quite
hope.
often there's sort of an undercurrent that I'm aware of. Something's going on back in the brass section, or something's going on over in the woodwind section, and then all of a sudden a big guffaw of laughter will come out, and we're not always aware of what those jokes are, but there are certain very sort of standard jokes that are told in music circles, and that was one of them I was telling you a while ago. This supposedly is another true happening that happened during one of the Metropolitan Opera rehearsals, and they were rehearsing Aida, and of course Aida is one of the biggest operas that requires masses of people, animals.
Elephants on stage.
Well, the original production had elephants because it occurred in Egypt, I guess. Most people, like in America, are not going to have elephants to put on the stage, but there are horses and things like that. And so, in other words, it's just a huge affair. And during one of the rehearsals, the horses were on the stage, and one of them had evidently just eaten. Anyway, he relieved himself all over the stage, and the conductor stopped, and he said, I didn't want to say it myself, but he said, "Lord, what a critic." And so there are various things like this that do happen.
Well, hopefully the Longmont Symphony Orchestra won't be facing any critical horse remarks in its performances. I don't think you're planning Aida in the future, are you?
Not that I know of.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Dan, and explaining behind the scenes of what it's like to perform in the Longmont Symphony and how much fun it is.
It was my pleasure to be here.
Bob? Actors are frequently considered a flighty bunch and about as far from a businessman as you might be able to imagine. But with us here in the studios today is a Longmont actor who is also a businessman in real estate, Arnold Turner. How did you decide to get into acting, since business is also part of your daily trade?
Well, when I was a little boy, my mother made me stand on a chair and learn a new song every day. And when my father would come home for dinner at night, I would stand on the chair and sing the song or recite the piece, and that's how I sang for my supper. I suppose she instilled that love of performing in me.
Well, now how do you build a character when you're an actor? I can't imagine putting myself in the frame of mind of a totally different person every week.
If you were a child, you remember playing make-believe, and it's a lot like that. Laurence Olivier defined acting as masochistic exhibitionism. And
Real nice.
Yes, and he's right. You have to submerge your own character and take on what you dream up or what you're told is the essence, the characteristics of whatever character you're going to be.
Well, now, you've performed with Potpourri Players, but you've also performed with the Denver Center for Performing Arts, as well as a number of theater companies back east.
Right.
And a variety of roles, such as Merlin and a Russian ballet dancer and a colonel with an enormous mustache. How do you turn on those different characters that you do?
Lots of different things help you with it. Each character has a unique walk. Each character has a unique rhythm to his speech. Some characters have a dialect. All of those kinds of things help you define the character, and then you play with it until the director says, that's the character I want for this show. Use that.
Well, now you have you know, sat here and talked to us very normally. You seem like a regular kind of person. How do you, can you demonstrate how you would change if you were suddenly acting?
I'm very fond of dialects, and dialects allow you a certain amount of character within the dialect. I like an Irish dialect, and the Irish, they're always smiling and talking. They are. One of the things that I like best about Ireland, they say, some take delight in the fishing and bowling, some take delight in their carriage or rolling, but I take delight in the juice of the barley and courting pretty girls in the morning
Quit
so
that,
early.
Mr. Turner. We're on television.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
What about the Russian?
The Russian.
How do you get a Russian accent? What does that sound like?
There are several sources of books that you can get that teach you phonetically how to do the accent. If you're working in a low-budget theater operation, it's entirely up to the actor to come up with that accent.
Learn it on your own.
Right. If you're working with a big, well-endowed company like the Denver Center Company, they have a dialectician, a voice coach, that gives the entire cast lessons in how to use that particular dialect.
Well, you were Major Petkov, I believe, in Arms and the Man.
Yes,
Was
ma'am.
that a Russian dialect there?
No, that director chose to use that as simply a straight, what they call stage English accent for the entire cast. It was set in Yugoslavia or Bulgaria, and nobody knew exactly what a Bulgarian accent was. The last show I was in with a dialect was Potpourri Players' production of You Can't Take It With You. Played, I can't remember the man's name right now, but he had a Russian accent. The Russians, they speak with a lot of force in their accent, like Ilya Kuryarkin did in the Man from U.N.C.L.E. series, and it takes a lot of that tongue up against the edges of your teeth to talk like a Russian.
Well, you sound convincing to me.
Thank you.
How can you stand after having been part of a performance such as the DCPA, where you practiced, you said, 15 hours a day frequently, to return to everyday workaday life? Don't you want to be a full-time actor?
I think variety is the spice of life in anything. When I was working full-time as an actor, I enjoyed it, but there were great periods of unemployment that weren't very pleasant.
Starvation is not appealing.
Starvation. As you can see from my size, I'm not into the starving artist aspect of acting. I would say that it's mostly monetary considerations. If you could make a decent living working full-time as an actor in Colorado, that's what I would probably do.
But you are doing some commercials and that kind of work now as well.
Sure, and that's a very interesting aspect to get into that I have not done all of that long. I've been mainly a stage actor. I'm getting some industrial films, some commercials for banks and various things in Denver, and that's a help.
Well, that's exciting, and I'm glad that you came in today and performed on our stage for us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Bob? Yeah. Okay. And you don't need to say anything.
I won't.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. We'll be back in just a moment. Sure.
Although youth hockey might be overshadowed by other amateur sports, the 1984 annual Christmas hockey tournament held at the North Jeffco Ice Arena in Arvada is proof that Little League hockey in the metro area is alive and well. Sponsored by the Arvada Hockey Association, the tournament invites teams from Colorado as well as other states, and at times even foreign nations. Tournament director Tom Southoff had this to say about the tournament and its competitors.
This is the 13th annual tournament, and we've been inviting teams from various parts of the country and from Canada during a period of time to come up and play hockey.
And what are the ages of these kids?
Well, we have 5 divisions, starting with mites, which are 7 and 8-year-old, squirts, peewees, bantams, and the high school age, which runs up to 18, 19 years old. In the past, we've had teams from Canada, and we even had a team from Sweden one year. This year, we have teams from Dallas, from Albuquerque, from Colorado Springs, and from Omaha, as well as several teams from the Denver metro area, a total of 24 teams in the tournament.
Strong enthusiasm, tough competition, and an occasional burst of temper combined to make this an exciting and enjoyable holiday competition. How did a couple of Arvada players feel about their team and its tournament outlook?
Oh, we're awesome. We're a great team. We're the best.
You gonna go to the finals?
Definitely.
Though these players seem confident in an Arvada victory in the Bantam class, they, as well as the other 4 classes of Arvadan teams, would not see a tournament win. The winners of each category are as follows. In the 7 and 8-year-old mite division, and in the 9 and 10-year-old squirt division, teams from Littleton, Colorado received the first place honors. And in the Pee-wee class, a team from Colorado Springs had the victory, and Denver University fielded a winning team in the Bantam class. Wrapping up the action, the high school age team from Littleton topped its division, giving the Littleton teams their 3rd victory in the 1984 Arvada Hockey Association Christmas Tournament. Stay tuned with Sports Spotlight for even more amateur hockey in 1985. From the North Jeffco Ice Arena in Arvada, this has been Rob Shepard reporting.